Hey everyone, my name is Old, and welcome back to Gameplay Disclosure. Last time, we covered the beauty of Coloric Road by BlazeJCY, which turned out to be one of the best levels we've had quality-wise in terms of gameplay. Today, however, we're covering a level from the 2019 2.11 era called Goodbye to the World, which was made by a person who went by the name Suxide, but now goes as ArturoChavez. He changes names a lot. And I promise, this one is far more interesting than Coloric Road. So, without further ado, let's get into the third part of Gameplay Disclosure with the level Goodbye to the World by ArturoChavez. Straight off the bat, we have a mildly odd section to begin with. To start off, this activation orb is in a 1-block area with H-blocks that confuse the player into not understanding where the hell they are. This part also feels awkward at times and can be very infuriating. Later on, there's more activation orbs that change the way that the platforms move. What you need to do is hit all of these activation orbs so that they move the platforms. However, this also can be very confusing for the player. But since there is an explanation that shows up when you die, it's not as big of a problem as the first one. These activation orbs could have been a little less oddly placed, but aside from that, this section is okay to me. Alright, I'm gonna be completely honest here. This is by far the worst section in the level and is incredibly inconsistent. Let's explain why that is. First off, you have to hit this hard to see activation orb to move this platform and get one of the keys required for coin 1. While this activation orb isn't too hard to see, I still felt the need to mention it. Alongside that, jumping into this 1-block gap requires hitting this pink jump orb. However, doing this is incredibly awkward to pull off, which causes a lot of inconsistency. After you enter that area, you have to jump out of it to get to the next bit. But, unlucky for you, the creator wanted to put an H-block in that exact place, which sometimes doesn't allow you to jump out of it if you time it wrong, making it an awkward timing. And that's not all. Later on, you have to go down here and jump on the first pillar, even though that's really hard to understand for most people. If you thought all that was bad enough, you're mistaken. Because after this, you have to jump out of this 1-block gap that, once again, has H-blocks that make the timing that much more inconsistent. This feels awkward, definitely confuses players, sometimes feels random, and is very unbalanced compared to the rest of the level. All in all, it's just not a good timing. Lastly, once you actually make it to the second key for the first coin, there's a blind jump orb that you need to be aware of, which counts as blind gameplay. So, lesson be learned, don't use H-blocks when that's completely unnecessary, because that's almost the entire reason why this section is as bad as it is. Moving on from the worst section in the level, this section also has the occasional annoyance that I need to point out. To start off, we have this dual bowl section. This part isn't that bad, aside from the beginning, since it's very easy to get confused by what to do at first. The rest of the dual bowl is also still slightly confusing, but not as bad. The other part that has a slightly annoying problem is the spider section. If you were to click a bit too slow between these two platforms, your spider can accidentally go for the middle. While this doesn't happen too often, it can be annoying at times to deal with this awkwardness. Fixing these parts wouldn't require much since they're pretty minor issues with the level. The biggest problem with this section lies within the wave part. I don't really know why, but this part is really awkward. Especially entering this upside down portal and staying between these platforms as the wave feels very unnatural to me. Aside from this cube part can also be kind of confusing due to how hard it is to see what's happening at the beginning. But aside from those points, this section doesn't have much else to offer. Changing the wave to be more fluid would already fix most of the issues that I have with it. I mean, this is certainly a way to end off a weird level. The beginning of this section requires you to hit a yellow jump orb inside of some portals. While this isn't too big of a deal, it can be somewhat hard to see for some people. The rest of this section is primarily boring gameplay. There's not much going on, and is also somewhat repetitive. If this section was spiced up a bit more, with some more things going on, I think this would have been a good last section to end on. Before I end this gameplay disclosure, here's my conclusion of what can be fixed in this level. To start off, this level is extremely awkward. There are several times where the level just doesn't feel right to the player. If you're unsure whether or not something is awkward, ask some people in your community to check if that's the case. There's a lot of confusing gameplay involved in this level. It's probably wise to revise these sections and make it a bit more clear what the player has to do. This is especially the case for the beginning activation orbs. The ending is incredibly boring to sift through and also has the same repeated pattern, which could be spiced up a bit to make the ending more engaging. While I don't think that blank gameplay is a huge deal in this level, you could also try to make it easier to read for the players into specific parts of the level. Lastly, the first coin is really inconsistent and the H blocks ruin all the timings leading up to it. My only advice here would probably be to remove those H blocks, since those are the only reason why no one will probably ever like that coin. With the conclusions out of the way, I hope you all enjoyed this gameplay disclosure. If you have suggestions of which rated level I should do next, or if you have suggestions for the layout of the series or how I do all of it, please let me know. I'm completely open to criticism of any kind, and I'm ready to adapt to a better system. And, by the way, do not send hate towards ArturoChavez for this level. Everyone has their bad levels, and I'm only here to point those out and give valid advice to fix these possible issues. I do not condone any form of harassment thrown towards a certain creator for one level, so just don't do it. With all of that out of the way, this has been ArturoChavez signing out. I hope you all have a great day.